3 nanometers. That is the width of the cutting edge on a sword forged 400 years ago. No electricity, no microscopes, no documented theory. A charcoal forge, a hammer, and an edge thinner than anything modern surgical steel can produce. When researchers at Dresden University examined the blade in 2006, they put it under a transmission electron microscope. What appeared on the screen should not have existed. Nanotubes, cylindrical molecular structures of pure carbon, 50 nanometers in diameter, arranged in geometric patterns inside the steel. The same structures that were officially first identified in 1991, built into a sword forged in 1600. To picture that edge, a human red blood cell is 2,500 times wider. A blacksmith standing at a charcoal forge, with no instruments and no way to see what he was making, achieved a precision that modern manufacturers reproduce today using vacuum chambers and equipment costing millions of dollars per machine. They published the finding in Nature, one of the highest impact journals on Earth. No museum updated its labels. No textbook revised its chapters. The label in the display case, almost everywhere, still reads skilled smithcraft. We should be precise about what that finding does and does not prove. The current scientific consensus is that the nanotubes formed as a natural byproduct of the right materials processed by the right method. The smith did not need to understand why it worked, only that it worked and how to make it work again. But it raises a harder question. If the process was lost, the nanotubes were lost with it. And the process was lost not because the materials ran out or the tools broke. It was lost because the people who carried it stopped passing it on. That is a different kind of loss. The blade is called Damascus Steel. For 900 years, swordsmiths in the Middle East forged blades with a distinctive watered pattern rippling across the surface. Crusaders returning from the Holy Land described swords that could cut a silk scarf falling through the air. The scarf split before it touched the edge. European metallurgy spent centuries trying to understand how. It still cannot fully reproduce them. The formula passed from master to apprentice, hand to hand, forge to forge, city to city, across the Islamic world. Then, in the 17th century, one generation failed to pass it on. 2 generations later, no living smith knew the process. The last documented Damascus blade was forged sometime in the early 18th century. We do not know the name of the smith who made it. We do not know if he knew he was the last. Somewhere, in a workshop that no longer exists, the final set of tools was put down. The forge went cold. No ceremony, no record. Just silence, where a 900-year tradition had been. Researchers have spent decades attempting to reverse engineer it. They can reproduce the pattern. They cannot reproduce the behavior. The blade still outperforms their laboratory results. India. The blade tradition, called Wootz steel. Produced from roughly 300 BCE, Wootz was the raw material that fed the Damascus tradition. Indian metallurgists exported ingots westward for centuries. Modern researchers studying surviving Wootz blades found the same nano banding, the same impossibly fine internal architecture. The Wootz tradition was disrupted during British colonial administration. Local production was suppressed, and master metallurgists were displaced. 2 generations later, the formula was gone. And then there is the finding that has no explanation at all. Ancient China, the Minyue kingdom. Bronze arrowheads, mass-produced for warfare. They look ordinary. Greenish patina, tapered tip. Nothing marks them in a museum case. In 2024 and in 2025, not decades ago, but in the last 2 years, materials scientists ran those arrowheads through electron microscopy. What appeared on the screen was deliberate nanoscale alloy stratification. Layered metal architecture at a precision achievable in modern industry only in 2020, using vacuum-controlled casting equipment that fills entire factory floors. The arrowheads were over 2,000 years old. Unlike Damascus Steel, there is no surviving oral tradition here, no recipe that was lost. There is only the object, and the object should not exist. No mainstream explanation has been published. The finding sits in specialist journals, waiting for a consensus that has not arrived. 3 civilizations: India, the Middle East, China. Different metals, different eras, different cultures that never met as equals, all producing material containing nanoscale engineering that should not exist before the 20th century. All 3 traditions ending within roughly the same window of history. 3 formulas, 3 regions, 3 different official reasons. For one formula to disappear, you need a disaster. For 3 formulas to vanish across 3 continents within a few centuries of each other, you need a decision. Return to the Dresden Microscope. 2006. Poffler's paper in Nature. The proof, photographed, measured, peer-reviewed. Now picture what a finding of that magnitude would normally trigger. New funding streams, international collaborations, museum exhibitions, a revision of the standard timeline. None of that happened. Modern defense contractors spend billions per year developing nanostructured steels for armor and aerospace. Research programs funded by the Department of Defense treat nanoscale metal control as frontier technology, the cutting edge of what humanity knows how to do. And in a display case in Dresden, a sword forged 400 years ago is doing exactly what those billion-dollar programs are trying to learn. No priority research funding for surviving Damascus blades. No excavation programs for the workshops where Wootz was forged. The Minyue arrowhead findings will not reach a textbook for a generation, if ever. They could not see what they were building. They only knew it worked, and they knew how to make it work again, until they did not. The forge went cold, the workshop emptied. The formula died with the last person who held it. Knowledge appears. Knowledge disappears. Always by decision. Never by accident. The question is not how they did it. The question is who decided you would not be told? And what they are deciding right now about findings sitting in laboratories tonight that you will also never hear about.